on lately. Just a few days ago, a Kaduna-based Islamic cleric in Nigeria, popularly known as Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, went on his Facebook page and launched a direct attack on Captain Ibrahim Traore. It seems as though the Captain Ibrahim Traore has become very popular lately. And let me read you, all right, what he said. And there will be no confusion because we have to clarify, okay? This is our job. Now, Gumi described Traore, and I'm quoting directly. He said, Captain Ibrahim Traore is too young and inexperienced. He said Traore is very naive to understand the complexity surrounding religion. He said society, and he said global politics. That Traore does not understand any of those three. He went further and said, I quote, that Captain Ibrahim Traore was born on the 14th of March 1988 with his anti-Sharia stance at the age of 38. With nothing but military training on his resume, he is too naive to understand even the complicity of the society he is ruling under the gun. So, let alone the dynamics of contemporary geopolitics. This framing was launched against Captain Ibrahim Traore by an Islamic cleric from Nigeria who got his certification for Islamic jurisprudence in Saudi Arabia, who is one of the leading founding figures of Salafi extremism in Nigeria. The Salafi Saudi Wahhabism in Nigeria, just to be clear. Then he made a very interesting statement. He said Traore, as and I quote again, given the extremists in Burkina Faso the weapon they need to conscript more foot soldiers, all right? So he's literally saying that Traore has given some of this JNIM or whatever they call themselves more fuel, to continue the fight that they've been waging for quite a while against Burkina Faso. He said they will now have more, motivation to conscript more foot soldiers against the secular regime of Burkina Faso. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a man sitting in Kaduna in Nigeria, all right, one of the most terrorized region in Nigeria right now, a country that has been torn apart by banditry called Nigeria, kidnapping being the order of the day in a country called Nigeria, and insurgency is almost a constitutional, reform as we speak. Now, he's telling the leader of Burkina Faso that standing for religious freedom for all Burkinabes, right, will give extremism more foot soldiers, and it will fuel their drive to continue to destabilize Burkina Faso. That is what a donkhead in Kaduna State is telling Captain Ibrahim Traore. What do you think about that? Now, the question we should ask first of all is, whose interest is Gumi speaking for? Now, the funny aspect of the whole thing, you see, when you trace the pattern, it becomes very, very clear whose interest Sheikh Gumi represents, because it's always about interest. Gumi has built his entire public profile as the primary advocate for armed bandits group in northern Nigeria. And I say this because it is documented. According to the Africa Report, and I'm quoted, Gumi is the polarizing cleric who advocates for Nigerian deadliest bandits. He enters forests to meet the kidnappers. He negotiates with the same people who have abducted thousands of school children in Nigeria. He described bandits as victims on a revenge mission. Now, the revenge mission is on common Nigerians that have no means to defend themselves. This is the man that thinks he has the moral justification to hold a finger against Captain Ibrahim Traore. What a shame. He once went to the national television and he said, ladies and gentlemen, listen to this carefully. He said Fulani herdsmen turned bandits do not attack people without any cause. He called the kidnapping of school children by these same bandits a lesser evil. He argued that compared to what he described as IPOB agitation, that the bandits are ready to listen to government. He was advocating that the government should give amnesty to bandits. This is a man who thinks he can speak when Captain Ibrahim Traore walks around the park. Now, you see, when you see Gumi attacking Ibrahim Traore for rejecting Sharia in Burkina Faso, you must ask yourself, is this about Islam or is this about something else entirely? All right? Because the same Gumi who claims to defend Islamic law has spent years providing moral and religious cover, justification for armed groups in Nigeria that have killed thousands of Muslims. I mean, if we are not even counting millions, all right? But according to the documented fact, they killed thousands of Muslims across the northern Nigeria. According to the documented reports we have over 4,722 people that were abducted just over a year between July 2024 and the month of June 2025. Now, over 2,500 were killed in the first half of 2025 alone. Now, this year this year completely eclipsed the record of 2025. And men like Sheikh Gumi still works with so much impunity within Nigeria. They have not been able to do anything about him. It tells you everything about the entire Nigerian hierarchy. And his consistent message has been negotiate with bandits. Don't call them terrorists. Learn to live and coexist with terrorists. These are the words you hear from a man like Sheikh Gumi. He said the government should give them amnesty. Don't call them terrorists. So when Gumi speaks about Traore, he is not speaking for Muslims. He is speaking for a network. He is speaking for an ideological ecosystem, all right, that benefits from instability, all right, that benefits from weak governments. But that government does not exist in Burkina Faso. That benefits from the chaos, all right, the very chaos he claims to be solving through his advocacy that government should negotiate with terrorists. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Burkina Faso. This is not Nigeria. And I wanted to say something yesterday about why they say Nigeria is the giant of Africa, but that is not the conversation for today. That intelligence information does not apply to today's conversation. So stay with me, because at the end of the day, everything we've said earlier, it will come back to play out here because of the people that are sponsoring him, the people that funded his father, because it didn't just start right now, all right? So the next thing we have to talk about is who Gumi represents, all right? So to understand Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, you need to understand his father, all right? Because you must understand the house he was born into. Now, it's like father, like son. That thing has not traveled too far. Ahmad Gumi is the eldest son of Sheikh Abubakar Mahmoud Gumi, who was the Grand Qadi. And when they say you are the Grand Qadi, it means you are the highest Islamic judge of the whole northern region of Nigeria. At that time, Nigeria was still being governed with the regional system of governance. So the entire northern region, his father, all right, who was Abubakar Gumi, was the Grand Qadi, like the highest Islamic judge in the whole of the northern region of Nigeria at the time, from 1962 to 1967. So Abubakar Gumi was not just a judge. He was the single most important architect of Salafi Wahhabi penetration into northern Nigeria. Get that very, very clearly. Salafi Wahhabi penetration into northern Nigeria. So when you see the product, when you see the progeny of such progenitor advocating for murderous individual, you have to know that the fruit never fall far from the tree. We won't stop at that, because Gumi has stepped out of line and we have to, he violated, and we have to demonstrate his flaws right now. According to the Council of Foreign Relations, Abubakar Gumi returned from British colonial education. He returned from British colonial education. Now, they did not specify. We have to understand, what did they impact into Abubakar Gumi? Because after he came back, he became an outspoken opponent of traditional Sufi Islam in Nigeria. That was when Islam was well appreciated in Nigeria. But after he came back from the British colonial education studies he had abroad, he started, this whole traditional antagonism against Sufi Islam in the north. It was instrumental in forming the Izala movement, the Society for Removal of Heretic Innovation. Now, the establishment of the Sunnah in 1978, this movement called Izala became the vehicle for the Saudi-styled Wahhabism in Nigeria. Nigerian Muslims are the worst on the planet. I'm sorry to say this, all right? I mean, the Muslims in the north, man, those guys who they can, there is nothing they cannot do. The proof is out there in the pardon. I'm past making videos because I can drop the evidences. More than 30, when they've, summarily executed people because of things that are not sensible at all. So this is when you allow men like Gumi to walk freely, all right, among Muslims, then you see the comedy of Muslims that this type of man walk among, every one of them are potential bandits. Now, here's the crucial connection thread, all right, because the CFR documents that Gumi and the Izala received significant financial support from Saudi Arabia. Now, I'm going to share with you something that is documented in declassified intelligence documentation. According to academic research published by Lynn Rayner Publisher, all right, and I quote, as early as 1970, the CIA estimated Saudi Arabia to have provided about $36 million in 1970. $36 million annually to Abubakar Gumi for promoting Salafism in Nigeria. So they were funding him. So who is the best ally of Saudi Arabia? You should know something today. If the West cannot come at you directly, see, there are layers to this proxy, and you must be able to understand how far it goes for you to be able to extract yourself from this mess. If the West discover that you are looking at them as your main enemy, then they use their proxy. So when you see the United Arab Emirates, you see Saudi Arabia, coming at you as if they're friends, it's just the West coming at you in another shape. It's the same thing. So, because the question you should ask, who is backing Saudi Arabia up? If the UAE is sponsoring the genocide in Sudan, who is backing them up? Now that the Sudanese armed forces is beginning to gain territory once again at God's speed, who is now sanctioning them? Who is putting pressure on the government to not harm the same militias that are deleting a lot of black Sudanese people? It always goes back to the same people. So, ladies and gentlemen, in 1970, the CIA, they already know who Gumi was, and they already have it documented that he was receiving $36 million annually, but they did not stop him. Now, $36 million annually in the 1970s. Even in 2026, that's a huge amount of money. Imagine in the 1970s. So what do you think the foreign nation, the Western nations, how much do you think they are pumping into your country now to fund extremism? Because they have been funding the foundation from 1970. The Kissinger report made it clear, as stated, that Nigeria must not be allowed to cross a certain Rubicon. It's a country that from every angle must not be allowed to develop, must not be allowed to get out of their ignorance. So if you understand. So the CIA owned declassified document, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, I have verified this. The CIA reading room contains documented title, all right? They call the pattern and implication of Islamic revival. This directly references Abubakar Gumi. It states that, and I'm paraphrasing, from intelligence assessment in the 1960s, when the Arabs began to invest in African Muslim causes, Gumi succeeded, according to US Embassy reports, in making himself the principal recipient of all this money. So you see the picture. The United States intelligence community was already tracking Abubakar Gumi. They know who he was. They knew who was funding him. They knew the funding pipeline, and they allowed it to flow because during the Cold War, Saudi Wahhabism penetration of Africa, it served Western interest at the time. And it countered socialist and Pan-African government on the continent at the time. Another Cold War is being fought in 2026. It's about what side are you on. All right. Now, Ahmad Gumi inherited his, the son of Abubakar Gumi. He inherited his father's network. Now, this story is going to be very interesting, and I want you to pay attention. He inherited the ideologic infrastructure his father has built with Saudi and Western intelligence money. All right. He studied at Al-Qura University in Mecca, the same institution that produced some of the most hardline Salafi ideologies. His classmates included Abdurrahman As-Sudais and Saud Al-Shuraim. These are some of the most dangerous men on the planet. Now, he returned to Nigeria after being trained. It's like anyone that has watched Spartacus. It's like it's like you were being trained to disconfigure people in the house of Batiatos. So what type of tell me what type of, under what type of dominoes are you going to get the better training? So this is where this man was trained. All right. So he was funded, he was enabled, he was supported. The financial logistic was there. Now he returned to Nigeria and positioned himself as the continuation of his father's work from the 1970s. Now, this is not a man speaking from independent religious conviction. This is a man operating a franchise. A franchise that was built with the Saudi petrodollars. Get that language, petrodollars. All right? Monitored by the CIA. You see, when you hear monitored by the CIA, some of you will feel like maybe the CIA, they saw him as a criminal or something like that. No, it's being monitored. Sometimes when you give people money, you have to monitor them just to make sure that the financial logistic get to the right people. Do you get what I'm saying? So that they are monitoring does not mean they are not complicit, okay? So it was monitored by the CIA and it was deployed against African sovereignty. So when you see certain cleric standing up today and condemning Ibrahim Traore, it did not start today. It started even before the Sankara era in the 1970s. So this is not a man, all right, that is speaking for his conviction about Islam, all right? This is a criminal working in a human being, all right? So now, I have to tell you something more about this man called Sheikh Gumi, who thinks he has enough moral justification and enough reputation to speak about our most esteemed captain. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the Saudi Arabia deportation, because that is very, very important. Because if Gumi is such a defender of authentic Islam, why has Saudi Arabia, the same country that educated him, the same country that brought him up in this extremism, the custodian of the two holy mosques, they rejected Abubakar Gumi not once, they rejected him twice. And I will give you the facts. In February 2010, Sheikh Gumi, let me call his full name, Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, was arrested by Saudi Arabia authorities in Mecca. He was detained for over 6 months. More than half a year, under house arrest. The reason, according to International Center for Investigation report, the United States shared intelligence with Saudi authority that Gumi has been exchanging emails and communicating with Umar Farouk Abdulmutalab. I know a lot of Nigerians remember that name, all right? Abdul Muttalab is the Nigerian man who attempted to detonate a plastic bomb hidden in his underwear on the Northwest Airline Flight 253 on Christmas Day 2009. He was convicted of terrorism and sentenced to 4 lifetime plus 50 years in prison. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula had helped form that attack. All right. And Gumi was exchanging emails with the bomber shortly before the incident. And this is the Gumi that is walking free in Nigeria today. Is Nigeria really free? Is it even a normal society if a man like this can be speaking and influencing a lot of misguided northern youths in 2026? So after that, all right, because a lot of people will say this is speculation. No, this is not a speculation, all right, because it is documented. The ICIR verified it. Gumi himself confirmed he was detained. Though he blamed it on conspiracy, all right, he was eventually released after the Nigerian government went to beg Saudi Arabian government. So if you see your presidents in Nigeria begging, it has been a long-term practice. You can't shame the shameless. Anyway, then in May 2025, all right, just last year, Saudi Arabia struck again. Gumi was arrested when he arrived in Medina with a valid Hajj visa. He had a valid visa. He was denied entry. He was deported not hours later. He was deported with immediate effect. Saudi authorities cited, and I quote from multiple reports, security concern linked to his involvement and role in local security crisis regarding the bandits in Nigeria. Saudi Arabia, the country Gumi's father served as a proxy, all right, for many years, looked at the son of Abubakar Gumi and said, you are a high security risk to Saudi Arabia. You cannot enter Saudi Arabia. You cannot perform Hajj. Now, when a country that trained you, that built up that machinery, that turned you from a human being into a machinery of the devil, when they tell you that no, this is your type of them, you are now a national security threat to that same nation that trained you. You should know that this is supposed to be a man that is supposed to be in one of the worst prison in Nigeria. You definitely know that this guy, if he is in Burkina Faso, he will be in one of the in fact, his life will be a tragedy. But you always find this type of men walking freely in Nigeria, because if Saudi Arabia can deny him Hajj even when he had a valid visa, you should know the type of security threat we are talking about. And this is the same person that think he has the moral justification to talk about Captain Ibrahim Traore. I'm not done, ladies and gentlemen. When the country that funded your father's entire ideologic project, when they ban you from entering their country, what does that tell you about Sheikh Gumi, the man that think that think Captain Ibrahim Traore is too young and naive? Now, let me address this directly, because people will ask, is there evidence that Gumi's lineage worked for Western intelligence? Now, the evidence is not single. No. The document says that Gumi was a CIA asset. That was what the CIA own document says. That Gumi was a CIA asset. I'm talking about his father, who was Abubakar Gumi. The CIA has nothing to hide. They always declare who their assets are. Remember, there was a time they said the president of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they said he was an active CIA asset. One of the things that still, bothers me is how they publicly declare who their assets are. Maybe it's an effort to further corner them, just to make sure that they don't get out of line. Because if they do, they might get knocked out. So intelligence doesn't work that way, all right? But the circumstantial chain is overwhelming, and I lay it out for you because they can't just be making this claim without no justification. The CIA owns the classified document. In 1980, track Abubakar Gumi's role in Islamic revival in Africa. The assessment document pattern and implication of the Islamic revival in the CIA's reading room. If Gumi, specifically in that context of Arab investments of African Muslim causes, Abi, if it's not really involved in these things, US embassy will not be reporting on his activity. They won't be tracking the son of that same person till this day. All right. Now, second, $36 million annually in the 1970s. This is a big family. And you know, there is no way what your father stands for. You will always see the traces in the son, you know, most especially in a place like northern Nigeria. And you know, there's something called variation. Every father prays for their son to be better than them in what they are doing. So imagine how dangerous this man is if his father was even that dangerous. So Gumi was a CIA estimated agent according to reports, all right? That means the CIA was watching the money. They knew the amount. They knew the recipient, and they did nothing to stop it. So why? Because during the Cold War, right, the Saudi Wahhabi penetration in Africa served Western foreign interests. So, according to the information that we further report there, when the United States needed to act against Abdul Muttalib, who wanted to detonate a plastic bomb, the US simply did not go after Muttalib, all right? See, Muttalib wanted to destroy an aircraft. The US did not go after Muttalib. They went after Gumi. Hey, listen, hear me out. Oh. There is a guy they are tracking, right? That's the guy carrying the bomb. And the US intelligence say, no, don't go after that guy. Go after this guy. That means they know that this guy is even more dangerous. And they know that this guy will be aware of everything that other guy is about to do. That is the level of threat that Sheikh Gumi is. And this is the man that walks freely in a country like Nigeria. Now, the US shared the intelligence with Saudi Arabia that led to Gumi's arrest, and that was able to help the intelligence and the security of Saudi Arabia to apprehend Abdul Muttalib, who was later sentenced. All right. Now, they had this communication, they had these emails, they knew who he was talking to. That is to tell you the level of priority they made his threat, right? You know, there are levels to threat. Gumi is a high priority threat when it comes to US intelligence. So the pattern continues like that. So you see, these are not contradictions. This is how the game is being played. You fund Islamists, you fund the secular government, all right? You keep both sides in a manageable conflict, and the continent of Africa in this type of situation. When you put all these conditions in place, the continent where those people are from will never emerge. So if a country like Captain Ibrahim Traore's Burkina Faso is now emerging, it is a threat to the existence and the fundamental lifeline of people like Gumi. All right? So let's be very clear. He called the kidnapping of school children a lesser evil. He said bandits are on a revenge mission and should be negotiated with by the Nigerian government, not fought on the line of contact. He argued that Nigerian government should set aside budget for bandit inclusion, like a special budget for bandits, like amnesty. He compared armed bandits favorably to IPOB, saying that they still listen, but IPOB does not listen. Now, the Nigerian Department of State, the DSS, invited him for interrogation in June 2021 over his relationship with bandits. So a lot of people will come out on social media and be like, the Nigerian government delegated him to negotiate. But if the DSS invites you on your role in terrorism, do you think you are really so innocent like that? Do you think the Nigerian government are really, they approve everything he's doing? So now, that is not the only thing. The human rights group has called this, they've called for his arrest for defending bandits and sabotaging military efforts. Now, Saudi Arabia, that should be his natural ally, they banned him from entering their country, not because of his political views on Palestine, all right? As he claims that it was because of his views on Palestine, but because of documents linking him to terrorists and bandits, and because they have captured him before. when he was already working hand in hand with a man called Abdul Muttalib to destroy a high, targets in Saudi Arabia and also in Nigeria. So this is a very, very huge asset here. I don't know if it's Western asset or if I should call him Saudi Arabia asset or I should call him an asset of the Islamic Mujahid world or whatever they want to call him. So this is the reason why entities like this should be isolated from the society, because they operate as parallel authorities. Gumi enters forests that Nigerian military cannot enter. Let nobody deceive you. This guy can negotiate with any terrorist as far as Nigeria is concerned. No matter how dangerous they are, he can go there and negotiate with them. So what does that tell you about him? All right. It provides religious legitimacy to armed groups. It shapes public opinion to normalize the idea that kidnappers and killers deserve amnesty and renegotiation. When a society allows figures like Sheikh Gumi to operate freely, it creates a dual power structure. All right. On one side, you have the state, and on the other side, you have Sheikh Gumi and his Isba. There are different. I don't even know how Nigeria is still functioning as a state. All right. And they have their own courts too. So Gumi, with his direct access to bandits, his religious authority, and his ability to deliver outcome that the state cannot in 2026, this undermined the monopoly of force that defines a sovereign state. All right. Captain Ibrahim Traore understands this. And this is why he said no religion is above the nation of Burkina Faso. That is why he rejected Sharia as a governing system, why his personal Muslim faith remains intact. He is saying in Burkina Faso, there is one sovereign nation. There is a sovereign people. Through their state, Burkina Faso is sovereign. So every Burkina people, they are sovereign. They are not under no cleric, not no foreign, funded religious movement, not extremism. Who claim to, not some extremists who claim to speak on behalf of God in the name of Sheikh Gumi. All right. So when Gumi attacks Traore because, the Traore model entirely threatens his existence and the franchise he inherited from his father. All right. If Burkina Faso succeeds as a secular state and it's being led by a Muslim personnel, it provides the evidence that you don't need Sharia to be a good Muslim. You don't need Saudi Arabia funding to build an Islamic society. You don't need bandit mediators to maintain security in the society. That is what it means. Why did Saudi Arabia propose to Burkina Faso that the only thing they can offer Burkina Faso is to build 200 mosques, not schools? It shows you that these people are not complicit. Saudi Arabia is a complicit state in all this problem. Now, so ladies and gentlemen, Abubakar Gumi introduced Salafi Wahhabism to northern Nigeria. All right. One of the offshoots, the group that was around, now this group that was created by his father, all right, one of those offshoots was the group around Muhammad Yusuf. So Muhammad Yusuf was a direct product of Abubakar Gumi, a man who studied under the same Salafi network Gumi built. Muhammad Yusuf founded the Boko Haram later. Now, I want you to hear me out clearly. I'm not saying that Abubakar Gumi created Boko Haram directly, but the ideologic ecosystem he built, the rejection of traditional Sufi Islam in northern Nigeria, the importation of Saudi Wahhabism, that idea that secular government is illegitimate, all right? The network of Medina-trained preachers, this ecosystem is where the Boko Haram emerged from in Nigeria. And the Boko Haram is one of the most dangerous terrorist sects in Nigeria to this day. Now, the CFR article I referenced earlier spells it out clearly. Salafism in northern Nigeria emerged with Abubakar Gumi, his radio preaching, all right? His anti-Sufi rhetoric, the Izala movement. All of this created the condition when Muhammad Yusuf became, all right, a very, very hardened terrorist, began denouncing Western education and secular government. He was drawing from the same well that Abubakar Gumi dug. Now then Abubakar Gumi took it further. He didn't just preach, he operationalized. He became the direct intermediary between the bandits and the state. He normalized the idea that armed actors deserve a seat at the negotiation table. He blurred the lines between criminals and, and the state, the line between terrorist and negotiator. His influence on terrorism in Nigeria is not something that can be underestimated. Now, you see, it's about creating ideological and operational space in which terrorism can thrive. And Captain Ibrahim Traore can see everything. When you tell bandits that they are victims on a revenge mission, all right, you give them moral permission. When you tell the government to negotiate with bandits instead of fighting banditry, you give the bandit time to regroup, reharm, and expand. When you say that kidnapping children, kidnapping pregnant women, and let's not just go further into what they do after, all right? You call it a lesser evil. You tell kidnappers that what they are doing is not bad. That is what you are literally saying. So this is the influence that has cost 1,000 lives, more, tens of thousands of lives. And this is the man behind it, all right? So families, Captain Ibrahim Traore stood before his nation and the world and said, I am a Muslim, I practice my faith, but no religion is above the nation of Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso will never implement Sharia law in Burkina Faso. He said Catholic, Protestant, traditionalists, and Muslims are free to practice their religion in Burkina Faso. And Burkinabe state will fund all of them equally. Get that very, very clearly. I think a lot of people miss that side. Burkina Faso will fund all religion in Burkina Faso. No external is allowed to fund them. Now compare it to the voices that have been ranting in recent days. On one side, you have a 38-year-old Captain Ibrahim Traore, who took power the right way because the people that were so corrupted and backed up by the West will not give power to the people that can really, really handle the future of the country. But then use the power to declare religious freedom, to fund all faiths equally, to tell his citizens studying Sharia abroad that they should come home and build their nation instead of importing foreign ideologies that end up destroying and displacing a lot of Burkinabe from their home. He did not persecute Muslims. He defended Islam. He simply said that, religion belongs to everyone in Burkina Faso and no one religion is greater than the state and no religion can dominate another. So on the other side, you have a 65-year-old Islamic cleric in Nigeria called Abubakar Sheikh Gumi, all right, sitting in a very, very disgruntled environment called Kaduna in Nigeria, calling Ibrahim Traore too young and too naive because he refuses to impose Islamic Sharia law, all right? The same cleric who called kidnappers the lesser evil, the same cleric who was detained in Saudi Arabia, deported from Saudi Arabia, detained in Saudi Arabia for over 6 months for communicating with a terrorist who tried to blow up an American airline. The same cleric whose father took 36 million every year from Saudi Arabia, documented by the CIA, to reshape Nigerian Islam into a tool for foreign interests. Who is the better Muslim, ladies and gentlemen? Is it Captain Ibrahim Traore or this 65-year-old shameless man here? So Islam teaches justice and all of that, but what this type of men teach is something completely different. So Ibrahim Traore is building a Burkina Faso that answers to only Burkinabe people, not Saudi Arabia that wants to come and build 200 mosques and train some students of Burkina Faso in Saudi Arabia on Sharia law so that they can come back from Saudi Arabia and, execute the chopping of hands and legs and all of that, because tell me what that Sharia, tell me in Nigeria, tell me what Sharia means in northern Nigeria. It's a law that, okay, if this person do this, you flog him like this. If this person do this, you chop off the hand. You chop the right hand and you take away the left leg. Those type of silly laws. It's for people that want to go and live in the bush. And we should make sure that we can take them to where. Thank you so much, my family, for the donation. Well done, brother. These people are the ones that don't want Africa to progress. Absolutely. They don't want Africa to progress at all. So Captain Ibrahim Traore is saying that you don't need foreign fundings to promote religion in our country. We will fund you. You have to make Africans love themselves. You have to see them as first. Now, if you ask anybody, you ask them today, what does Jesus look like to you? They will tell the image that comes to their head first is not the image of a man that looks like them. It's the image of a white man somewhere. If you tell the Muslim who is Prophet Muhammad, like, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it's that white Saudi Arabian man. Nothing that looks like them, you know. So this is where the soft power projection starts, when you look at somebody in another man's image. So when you see those people standing in front of you, so you will naturally feel inferior because you will think these are the descendants of the God that you as a slave serve. So decolonize yourself mentally and get the game. Don't fall for the beat at all time. So this is what we are pushing to the people. And we were simply minding our business. We're going about our business like we always do. And a Nigerian terrorist who lives in the Lungu of Kaduna, called our attention to it. I'm a Nigerian, by the way. There's nothing to be apologetic about. So I'm unapologetically saying that a fellow Nigerian in the name of cleric Sheikh Gumi, who is a known criminal, is a terrorist according to the documents we have here, according to the CIA report and all of that. It's a documented criminal. It was rejected from Saudi Arabia because of his criminal record. Captain Ibrahim Traore has no criminal record that anybody can talk about. And this man thinks he can educate us or educate Traore, referencing his years of the years he has spent in this world. So if you are 64 years old and you are 64 years old and you've not either either you are complicit in being a criminal, or you are not smart enough, or you don't even know what is it for African people to be free. It means the experience you have in that your 64-year-old head need to be knocked out. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, because if a 38-year-old person can do better than a 64, when you subtract the age, do you know how many wastes you have right there? So this is just for us to say that we will not tolerate anybody undermining African sovereignty. We will not tolerate any disrespect to Captain Ibrahim Traore. And why are we saying this? We're not saying this because we want to go back and forth with anybody without facts. Everything I said about this man here is documented fact. You can find it on open intelligence source. This is a criminal. This is a man who has no reputation. So, but where do you have this type of individuals moving freely? You can find a lot of them in Nigeria, the country that tolerates corruption from the beginning to the end. So when Ibrahim Traore speaks, men like this, they have no right to speak. So we speak on his behalf. And we have just been able to tell the people how this non-entity that is not supposed to be tolerated in any society, how he does not have the right to speak about Captain Ibrahim Traore. So we will speak on Gumi's behalf, and we will say that we are very, very sorry on behalf of a criminal like him. So ladies and gentlemen, this is what I've come this evening to do. And I think I've been able to provide you with some valuable information. If you find the information valuable enough, you can help us by hitting the like, share, and subscribe button. And if you're feeling generous, you can leave a comment. If you know something about this criminal entity that brought himself, he removed the cloud over his shadow so that the sun can shine on him and a lot of people can see him. And now we have seen him. So now that we have seen him, we're now pouring our accolades on him. So for those who still want to try to come against Africa, or to come against Traore, or to come against Assimi Goïta, or to come against President Abdurrahman Chiani, the floor is open. You can come, but you definitely know, except you've not done anything on this planet. Even if they remove it, we'll dig it out. So that is the thing. So thank you, family, and God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow. Homeland or death. It's not a joke. We're not playing with it. Thank you.